Moving on to question 2, and I think from some of the discussions that the mentors and judges have, this is really the crux of the whole submission, is related to the business planning question. Judges tip, I've always contended that the business plan question is the crux of the submission. Every element of the business, customer service, marketing, financial sustainability, product definition should be linked to a clearly defined business plan. It is interesting how often judges see a submission which has trouble demonstrating integration of the individual elements of the business into a networked whole. And a mentor tip as well, each entrant must have a well thought out and strategic business plan that is measurable. The basics of a good business plan are simple. Where the business is now, where does it want to be, and how is it going to get there? It's a roadmap for growth. So looking at question 2, business plan. Describe the key features of your business plan. For example, goals, strategies, outcomes. Be mindful that this is actually worth 10 points of the business planning question. So for question 2, so include your vision and mission. Consider using 3-column tables. Apply a SMART goal, specific, measurable, achievable, realistic and timely. Measuring your outcomes, as I think I said earlier on, measuring and showing what your outcomes are is imperative to your submission, and showing why you've achieved something or why you haven't achieved something, and actually showing that. Make sure that your business plan covers off on the topics that the questions asked later on in the discussion or is in the submission. So there's a question on sustainability later on, there's a question on community later on, marketing. All these things should be mentioned within your business plan. The judges don't want to see a submission that talks about later on they're doing all these things under sustainability, but there's no structure around it from their actual business plan perspective. So be mindful of that.
Classic example many years ago was a small business speaking about spending a certain percent of money on their marketing. These were all their target markets, they're all local, and then suddenly they went to Japan and they don't have an international market. There was nothing about an international market, but they started talking about this trip to Japan in there. It just didn't make sense and flow. So make sure your business plan flows out across your marketing, all your other business areas through your sustainability, as Chris said.
So Vincent, I suppose, in an excellent submission, what do you expect to see?
First I'll say I think this is your first time into the awards. I know this is the experience I had entering and saw also last year in first timers, is that it's where you find out, I don't think I've done the work behind here, and it's a bit of a realisation for you. So that's okay. Just go with what you've got and speak what you know. So I think the theme that's been there is absolutely true. Reading the submissions last year, it's about the continuity of the plan that you've got through. It is linked. One of the key bits that worked I saw in submissions was when it was laid out, the tables for me. I certainly own my group of 3 judges. Certainly the tables explained it very clearly, made it easy to read and clear. And most importantly, that measurable, the outcomes were there. It wasn't just a figure, it was actually, we could understand how you got to that figure and how it was measured. So somewhere in that, explain your measuring tools that you're using. So don't just put the, yep, we achieved this result. How did you achieve, how did you know you achieved the result? So, I'd say the really good ones have explained about the process they use to track and measure their results as well against their plans. So continuity through the whole works, and track and measure and explain how you do that.
So, in this section, there's quite a lot of commercially sensitive information that would be required. And we've not submitted before. I'd be submitting an accommodation category. I appreciate there's confidentiality, there's conflict of interest, but realistically, how much detail in terms of financial information would you be expected to provide?
Certainly not after the full P&L and the business.
Yeah.
Looking at, yeah, it used to be. I know, yeah, in the early days when I was submitting it was very challenging to do that. But no, it's just the broad, as your goals and targets, so it's not the detail of it. Some of the submissions talk in percentages, and they avoid talking in the actual dollar figures. But as I say, the process is, it is, everyone signs off, and I can remember one of the figures I think I read in any of the documents from now. So, and it certainly does add it if the real figures are in there to give you a sense of it rather than percentages. And,
so you feel that definitely adds value to it?
Certainly, and it's probably myself. I'd love, you can work this up. I love looking at the numbers and watching that side of things. So it worked for me actually seeing real figures in there rather than seeing the percentages. But
show a little bit of honesty as well. You know, that you're prepared to sort of put it out there, not everything obviously, but it's sort of, and then, you know, the judge can look at it and go, oh, that makes sense, yeah. And so how they've become technical or whatever it is.
I think it's also about sustainability. So they're looking for a financially sound business. So it's really about what measures are going to, or how can you demonstrate that your, I guess, your financial goals are being met, or what you're doing with the strategies around that. So measures that can show that, whether it's percentage, whether it's a whole number, you need to work out what it is, but it's what's going to, I guess, demonstrate your sustainability.
I'll give an example. There was one last year that was, and they went percentages, and it looked all great, but and it's to do with the honesty side of things. It was really when you read further in, you saw that it was on a very small base. And so, oh, it increased by 150%, and it sort of, so it didn't feel good as a judge reading that, saying, no, just stick with the numbers, and so it was sort of made to look better than it really was.
So a mixture is sometimes good. So if you start with like a general net profit or something, if that's relevant, but then you could talk about growth and use percentages for the rest of it. But if there's something in there, is the context. Just and on your earlier point around scale and things like that, it's quite interesting because across states there is a different level of understanding and awareness of groups and associations, whether it be a local association or regional. Some people might not know what an RTD is, for an example, but obviously we've been focusing on them here. So it really is the things that you think are quite basic sometimes aren't. So I know when I was in Tasmania, for example.
Do you think it's possible then to sneak in a glossary with table contents?
I would find that hard to read as a reader. I would find, my own personal opinion, that if, as I'm reading, it should be easy and just, I shouldn't have to look anywhere, I shouldn't have to go backwards and forwards, it should be quite simple.
I was just trying to make it easier.
No, I know. I think, I think if you can introduce it up front, that's the easiest way.
The next part of this question, which focuses on risk management, describe the risk issues you have identified for your business and summarise the risk mitigation strategies you have in place. So it's worth 4 points for this question. Business risks as well as operational risks. And in some of these examples are visitor and staff safety, equipment, weather, chemicals, funding, cash flow, theft, the strong Aussie dollar, global financial crisis. If you're a sole operator, what happens if you break your leg and you can't actually go to work and run your business? Think about how you manage your risk in that situation. Use a table to demonstrate what is the risk, what is the likelihood of that risk, and the effects, impacts from your business. It's a good opportunity here as well to use case studies. So if you have a particular case study where you actually have had a risk and you've got a particular outcome of that, you can actually build that into your submission as well, so that you can actually get some extra points that way, and showing that you are actually using your risk management strategies. Michelle, is in an excellent submission, what do you expect to see when it comes to the risk management component?
If you go to the next slide. Pretty much that. And just that is great the way it's been set out. I think because I've been a judge before, you go through it and you kind of look at it all and you read it, and what stands out are the things that are a little bit different that other business might not have done before, and it's those things that are just left of centre. And the judges will certainly know if there's something quite major that you haven't thought about, you know, in terms of backing up your computers, or, you know, it's those fundamental things now that we're in a technological age that we have to do certain things to ensure that, you know, we just keep everything going as it is. So, yeah, I think it's just a matter of including everything. If there's something that sort of sits outside the norm, definitely include that.
And probably to add to that is the outcomes. So if you have done something and you have a case study like Chris said, so say you had blackout, that the backup plan worked and you didn't lose any data, your accommodation booking still turned up, for example, actually show that there's demonstrated success of those strategies.
So part C of question 2 is a bit of a doozy because of the amount of parts that are to it. Demonstrate your involvement in and contribution to the tourism industry. Explain how it contributes to the success of your business and the tourism industry as a whole. So this is a 4-part question. Make sure you do answer all 4 parts and not just pick out 1 or 2 points and answer those. Make sure you do try and get the 6 points that you have available to you. Consider all aspects of the industry, local, regional, national, for mills, advertising what you do, providing mentoring, training programs, the particular boards that you sit on, are you members of a particular associations, contribution to strategy or plan, accreditation, but make sure you also quantify the benefits, as it does state that as well. Explain how your business contributes to the success of your business and the tourism industry. So that's really the second part of the question there. Moving on into this question a bit deeper though, who can I pick on now? Maybe Tom on the end. What are some of the interesting ways that entrants have demonstrated the success of their contribution?
Michelle and I were just chatting about this. This is a tough one. You're a couple running a small business. How can I suddenly be on the international market in tourism? And you're not. So you've got to look at what you actually do and how you impact out there and the things you're involved in, and you will be surprised how much you actually do and how many others you're in contact with. You're just got to take some time and sit back and look and say, yes, well, I did go to that. I did go to that VTIC conference and I did do this and I did do that. What a lot of businesses don't do is they don't record what they're doing on a day-to-day basis. And they get the awards and they, what did we do last year? Try to remember and go back through diaries, whatever else. And I've always recommended that keep nearly a little, I don't know, like a bucket nearly, and just put anything in that's to do with the awards, any activities that you do that you contribute to. And you'd be surprised, even attending today is part of your contribution to this industry. So there's a whole range of things that happen. So don't sit back and go, we're a mum and dad business running a little B&B. You contribute to your local community and that expands out. So have a look out and talk to other people about it and find out from them, because they'll say, well, didn't you do this and that? I think that's an important part. And the judges are aware of that. Judges don't look at it and say, because you run that small business, we expect you to be flying internationally going to conferences. They know that that's not what it is. So they're looking at it within the context of your business and how you're taking extra steps to expand your knowledge and your contribution to the industry.
I'll just throw in a suggestion that might help you, because it is multifaceted. So you might lay it out in a matrix to start with, at least, to make sure you've ticked off all the different components of it. So put in a table for yourself and have you filled in the boxes, and then you might turn that into words and write it up, but just to make sure you have covered off, put in a table to start with.
And maybe start that one first. Get it out of the way for a start, and it makes you think about your business as a whole, and hopefully all the other questions will flow from that.